Part 3 is the number one complaint made by the developers, and that's the difficulty. And even though the PS3 is still easier to work on than the PS2, it doesn't make that doesn't change the fact that the PS3 is still extremely hard. Now, going back to the PS2 for comparison, the PS2 had the Emotion Engine with two vector units in the chip. Now, the Emotion Engine itself required assembly level machine language. Very hard. Extremely low level. But, on top of that, the vector units required to use a proprietary language. So, using such an extremely low language and having to learn a new language was ungodly. I was just wow. But back to the PS3. The PS3 is still extremely hard to work on. And let's start with the cell processor. Now, despite its six SPEs, right? They are codependent cores. And when you're trying to work them, imagine using I'm going to use a juggling act as an example, because you're trying to send multiple commands through the main core, through the PPE, the power processing element, which is separate from the SPEs. That's the main core to give the commands to, right? And it's trying to juggle everything at once, and whoop, sometimes one of the balls drop, and then it causes a chain reaction. So you're trying to keep a difficult balance on something that's constantly going like a string. That's a string that's randomly going, and that kind of makes it hard. Now, another problematic aspect is the bandwidth with the RAM, because even though all the RAM is shared in some ways between the GPU RAM, the VRAM, and the main RAM, communication with the GPU and the cell, the RSX and the cell, is a nightmare. Because if you try to get the VRAM to access the cell, it's going to be extremely slow. And vice versa, if you try to get the XDR main RAM to access the RSX, it's extremely slow. And on top of that, those who are spoiled by 360 elements are going to complain about the separate two different memory pools, because it's two different RAM, two different kinds of RAM. And this has been going on for a long time. But yet, over the years, Sony has come out with better and better development tools for them. And PS3 development has developed quite a bit. But it doesn't change the fact that its difficulty has been a mass problem. Despite a lot of Sony's in-house developers have really been shown themselves to be coding masters and unleashing some of the best visuals and gameplay of this generation, which is completely undeniable. You look at Uncharted, you look at God of War, you look at these top-notch titles, and they are fantastic looking. And let's not forget Little Big Planet. But fret not. Sony has finally caved in. They have announced that next generation, they will finally make the machine easier to develop on. And hopefully that can breathe a true sigh of relief to all developers next gen. This is Yules One, the Homeless Gamer, signing out.